Hi, I'd like to talk to you about eggs today. And in specific, I would like to address two matters. The first of the matters is, are eggs good for you or are they bad for you? Well, that sounds like a very simple thing to answer, but it actually is kind of complicated because if you think of eggs in the narrow scope, um, you do get some protein from them and some other things from them like cholesterol, and we do need cholesterol. However, our bodies can help create cholesterol. Our bodies can synthesize cholesterol, so we don't actually need the eggs. And we can get protein from plants quite readily and more safely than from animal products. So we don't need eggs for that reason either. And in addition, so cholesterol. If you look at the white part of the white part of the eggs has very little in it that's a problem for us. It's more the yolk that is a problem for us because of all the cholesterol and protein and stuff that's in it. Um, Now, as far as the cholesterol is concerned, chicken eggs actually have got a large amount of cholesterol in them. Um, so it's not it's kind of questionable as to that. Now there are claims that that eggs don't adversely affect our health. They don't adversely increase blood cholesterol. They don't adversely increase LDLs. I'm not personally certain about that. All I can tell you is that of the 5 or 6 grams of fat in there, maybe 1.5 grams of it is saturated fats. So eggs are one of those things, I guess you could say, that on an individual's health level, there are pros and cons to consuming it, just like coconut cream or coconut meat. So you would need to take a look at whether it's going to be good or bad for your health. Now, if we look at eggs from a larger perspective in terms of environment, in terms of ethics as well, eggs are something that we shouldn't be eating. Now, the reason I say this is because, number one, the way that many farms, now I'm not saying all chicken ranchers are the same or that all chicken ranchers do what you see in the videos. There are chicken ranchers that allow their chickens to be free range in the true sense of the meat of that phrase. But there are many farms where chickens are trapped inside of small cages in buildings. Their lives are entirely orchestrated from birth to death. They have no control. They don't get to choose what they get to eat. Everything is all scientifically determined, and as a consequence, for example, chickens, which are naturally omnivorous to an extent, especially when it comes to eating insects, are given vegetarian feed. Well, that doesn't really make sense because chickens aren't vegetarians or much less vegans. And so, if you see, to me, if I see a brand saying, "Oh, it's vegetarian feed," I start to question, has the nutritional profile been altered? And if it has been altered because of that, which is highly likely, what is the impact on the chicken and what is the impact on us? So if you can imagine yourself, if you were able to produce something that was financially viable in terms of something that your body produces that could be harvested on a routine basis, how would you feel if somebody locked you in a small cage and then went ahead and kept you there for your entire life, and they were constantly, taking away whatever this product was that was coming from your body? How would you feel about that? And how would you feel that near the end of your life that you would be potentially treated very poorly, slaughtered for meat or whatever? Sometimes the treatment in some ranches of chickens is really very bad in terms of like the environment, in terms of overcrowding, in terms of abuse. So that's, ethically speaking, we're talking about an industry that has a history now, especially due to industrial farming, which was started maybe 70 years ago, I believe it was, maybe it was 80 years ago, does not take into consideration the chicken itself. On an ecological level, if we look at all the waste that comes out of a chicken farm, and we look at the large amount of antibiotics that some of these farms use in order to keep control of germs, and how those germs eventually become immune to the antibiotics. If we look at the impact of things passed on that are given to the chickens that come into us as a consequence, and if we look at the larger impact of the environment, in terms of, well, what are they doing with the manure? Are they processing the manure so that it is safe and can be spread on farms as a manure, or is it being sprayed raw onto farms, which means that it is not actually, because of the quantity, it's not safe, because it's going to soak into the soil and go down into the water table. There's going to be bacteria that are going to be carried, that are part of the feces, and so it's in some areas where there's a lot of chicken farming, there's a huge problem with the water table being contaminated by these chicken farms or chicken ranches. So ultimately, and I could give you a lot more arguments about this, but ultimately, if we're looking at the impact on the environment, the impact on the chickens, and the impact on our own health, eggs are really not a good thing to be eating, and so I don't recommend it. Now, obviously, you should talk to a medical professional who is well versed in nutrition, which is the average doctor is not. The average doctor gets very little to no training on nutrition, so unless they go back to university to get a degree in it, or if they study on their own, a lot of doctors really can't give you good advice on food, which is sad because the majority of the diseases that affect us now are caused by what we eat. So, getting to the second thing revolving around chicken, I'd like to explain to you something that I find is a bit of a confusing situation. It's also misleading. So when you buy eggs, if you don't see anything on the carton, you can assume then that the chicken are raised in those tiny little cages, and they are kept in those cages from the beginning to the end of their egg laying life. And their entire life is controlled. They have no control whatsoever. So they're basically biological machines that were not created to be biological machines in the sense that they're being used now as financial units. And when you buy eggs, you want to buy eggs if you are an ethical person who cares about the suffering of the chickens that are being sacrificed so that you can indulge in eggs. You want to look at, does it say cage-free? Does it say free-range? Does it say pasture-raised? Now, you would think that those three things actually mean something different. But the truth is that cage-free and free-range often have no different meaning in terms of what you would actually find on the chicken ranch. Cage-free is supposed to mean that the animals are not in a cage. However, that doesn't mean that they are out in the wild. They're not out in the pasture. They're not out in the farmland. That generally means that they are still trapped, but it's in a large climate-controlled building. And so the farmer has to walk around to find the eggs within that. And that, because that is a lot more time-consuming than an automated system that starts with the chicken laying the egg, and then the egg rolls down, and then the egg may either, depending on the system they're using, the egg may be in a trough, and they roll down the trough and go out, or the egg may just sit there and the farmer comes along and grabs the eggs out of the trough. But if they're not in a cage, that can't happen. The chickens lay the eggs where they lay the eggs, and the farmer has to walk around the building looking for that. Now, you would think that free range means that these chickens get to go wherever they want, just inside a building or outside of a building. And oftentimes that also is, that is not true. Oftentimes this has become synonymous. Not always, it depends on the farm, but it has become synonymous with cage-free. The chickens aren't in a cage, as with cage-free, but they are still trapped in a building that they cannot leave, and the farmer has to walk around the building and collect the eggs. Now, so basically, unless you can determine beyond a shadow of a doubt whether free range is being used as a synonym for cage free, or whether it actually means the chickens are free to come and go from the building that they live in, you have to assume that they're cage free, and thus it's a substandard existence for these chickens, because they never see the light of day. They never feel the wind in their feathers or anything like that. And they're probably being fed chicken feed, which is to say, it's not necessarily a balanced diet. And if you look at some brands, they will say that it's vegetarian feed, and again, that's problematic. The last one is the Pasture-Raised or something like that, where they're allowed to wander around outside and then they go back to their coop at night. That would be the ideal situation. Number one, because you may look at it as, first of all, and assuming that the ranchers aren't abusing the chickens in some form. First of all, the chickens are free to be inside or outside of their building, which means they're going to get sunlight. Also, the chickens are able to enjoy a form of life that approximates what they would have had in nature, and they get, assuming that there's availability of proper land for them to forage on, they are going to get a balanced diet, which means that the quality of the eggs in this situation is going to be much better in terms of the nutrients, also in terms of the shell strength. So these are not going to be eggs that are going to be a problem. Now, sometimes chickens who are allowed to be pasture-raised may lay their eggs in the pasture, and then of course the farmers have to find them. But typically the eggs will be laid where the chickens feel safe, which is in the building that they live in when they're not outside. So, when I did my comparison of chicken eggs of different types, I discovered that the best chicken eggs were the pasture-raised ones. They had a richer yolk color, and they had a better flavor than the cage-free, than the free-range, and especially better than the standard egg that is none of those. So, again, I don't recommend eating eggs because of the health risks that are involved. However, if you are going to eat eggs, please, for the sake of the chickens and for the sake of your own health, choose the best option, because eggs are rich in a variety of different vitamins and minerals. And so you can benefit from them. You don't need them for B12. B12 actually comes from bacteria, which you can get in the best form. It would be either a liquid or a crystal form, but it's harder to get out of animal products. Our bodies have a harder time extracting it from animal products than from plant products, which is also where you can get B12 sometimes. And that's generally because of dirt in like the roots. So again, I would recommend not eating eggs, especially if you have health issues related to meat and animal product consumption. But if you are going to, for your own health, to get the best nutrition possible out of the eggs, and also the fact that these eggs are going to be coming from chickens that are not stressed out by living in cages all the time, because trust me, I've seen some photographs, and these chickens, they peck at each other mercilessly because they're crammed in so close because they're trying to maximize space. So there's a lot of stress, and stress has an impact on their health, which means there's going to be more cortisol, there's going to be more adrenaline, and that can affect the quality of the eggs. So really, we want pasture-raised. The only downside of pasture-raised is it's going to be the most expensive choice. So either choose to protect your health, protect the health of chickens, and save money, and don't eat eggs. Find alternatives like arrowroot powder, or you should only eat the pasture-raised eggs, and that provides the optimal choice for yourself as well as the chickens. And farmers also benefit more from that as well. That's pretty much all that I had to say about that subject. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.